Good afternoon, evening, morning, whatever it is with you. Welcome to Nature Echoes. It's on this Wednesday, a new day for trying this out on 20th September 2023. And thank you for joining me. It's our weekly time of echoing news, stories, poetry, and art, and connected to nature folklore and our precious water, the holy wells, the woodlands, the trees, the hedges, especially today, and wildlife. So hail, hail, whole, and holy good health to you all. And glad if anybody is watching. And it is a new day. I've moved again from Tuesday evening onto the Wednesday evening because there's a writers group I want to get to on Tuesday evenings in Mohill Library, and there's some writers that go along that I admire. So I'd like to join in with that. So that's why I've moved to Wednesday, so I can get to the writing group in Mohill on the Tuesdays. What am I gonna talk about? It's only going to be trees and woodlands. I'm going to be certainly focusing on, and probably the latest on with journaling nature folklore, which is now Owen Prompts, and the other news that I've got. And this Nature Echoes Live, plus the growing nature folklore videos, the articles, the photos library, and what's going on with Owen Prompts, the course modules for that. It's all brought to you due to the kind support of our very kind subscribers, and that's the link there for subscribing. And there is a free subscription there, and you get an access to at least 40 very informative nature folklore articles. I'm in the middle of the Ale House Wives, which is quite an epic, and people are enjoying that one. I'm on part 3, I think, part 4 coming up. And if you upgrade to become a support subscriber, that includes my Owen Prompts course, 20 course modules a year. It used to be called the Journaling Nature Folklore course, and you can join that at any time. And you'll get updates each year, even a name change this year. So there's always going to be more put onto the module of the year before. So it's a revolving course. You can join at any time. And as soon as possible, I'll get going with the 4 seasonal online live workshops. Every day, I think we get more ideas of how to bring the people that join me on Substack offline into some events. Some great ideas coming up. But altogether, it's a cost of €5 a month, or you can go for the 50% discount, €30 a year, and the equivalent in your currency. So thank you, support subscribers who go for the subscription. That's why I'm able to carry on broadcasting, because that helps me to cover the annual and the monthly subscriptions to services to keep this on the air. So with that show survival pledge, drive sorted. Let's see what lovely early birds there are. I see the tickets coming up of people that are joining in, but nobody's made a comment and said hello yet. So I'll just keep going here. And the first thing, the first echo that I'm going to share with you, it was a nice surprise to me. It was the Drumshambo Woodland Project. And I think I put a little bit, I haven't put any pictures up. Let's test out the pictures. There's me with Dairy Calm woodlands in the background. So let's see that we give you a full epic of that. And that's about this time of year. And when we're walking there, and that is the logo that probably you looked at and came to see what I'll be talking about. So that's working in great order as well. I've got a few more pictures today, not as many as I usually have. But talking of the Drumshambo project, here's a nice sort of GIF. Here we go. I wonder, does the GIF work? No, the GIF doesn't work. It just gives you a picture. So I never tried a GIF on the Substack before, but all it does is give you the picture. Never mind. Nice try anyway. But I wasn't aware of the wonderful Irish organization. It's called Woodlands of Ireland, based in nearby Drumshambo, a lovely South Leitrim small town that has got a lot going for him. Wonderful projects, very much an arty, creative musician, nature conservation area, wonderful little festivals each year. Fabulous town. It's amazing what it's growing with traditions and its art. The Woodlands of Ireland, they're actually very well established. They're a non-for-profit charity dedicated to conservation and expanding of the too few native woodlands of Ireland. They don't actually do any woodland management, I don't think. They don't do any meetups either, like the Native Woodland Trust does around Ireland. But Woodlands of Ireland, they seem to operate as a media and information organisation. And it says on their website, their objectives are to generate more public awareness of the few native woodlands that are around in Ireland, also to lobby the government policymakers to make sure that there is an expansion and a greater interest of this. If I swap me over, there's, I suppose, no, that didn't work, did it? Let's say, yeah, there we go. A picture there. Woodlands of Ireland. They encourage native woodlands to develop. They encourage the projects of woodland development, native woodland development, and sustainable management strategies of them. And this is aimed at ensuring the future viability of native woodlands to make sure they don't disappear on us, basically. So Woodlands of Ireland is very well funded, actually. It's funded publicly by the National Parks and Wildlife Service, which I'm glad we do have in Ireland. They do great work. Also the Heritage Council, the Department of Agricultural, Food and Marine involves some funding as well. And I believe the Woodlands of Ireland, it was inspired by the project called the People's Millennium Forestry Project. If you remember that, it kind of kicked off way back in 1998. There we go. That's definitely a millennium forest that's kind of grown up nicely. And what happened, there were 30 native woodland proposals made at the opening up of the project, and they were submitted by various native woodland interest groups. And so the People's Millennium Forestry Project, what it was intending to do, what it did do was actually revive existing native woodlands. It expanded some of them, and it actually created new semi-native woodlands. And I call them semi-native because humans planted some of the trees. I think I've got some human there. There he is planting some trees. I'm not sure if it was that project, but it's very close to how the extension of the new woodlands were actually planted. So these are bare root plants of native trees planted sometime between November and March, I assume. And the real native woodland, if it is a real native woodland, there's no human touching with it. It's created by nature, and I've brought up a bunch of birches here because often the starting of a woodland, the pioneering of a new woodland, is the arrival of birch seeds in the wind, because birch seeds, when they fly, it's amazing. They just travel miles. They're so light, and then when they land and grow, they seem to recognize the seeds around growing. So they all grow together and do the pioneering to create a woodland that once the birch start growing, then the arrival of other seeds happen through the wind that don't travel as far as the birch. And also there's more seeds that come in through bird poop and animals burying seed and then forgetting where they put them. So the one essential thing needed to humanly expand woodlands and native forests and in our own gardens is to actually establish tree nurseries. So this is something that the Millennium Forest Project encouraged us to do, and that type of thing. That's pretty good community conservation education, because that's what goes with a lot of these native tree nurseries. They're not commercial, they're voluntary, they could be local community, but schools are doing this very much. I've got a son who's very much involved in encouraging this as well. But the tree nursery is very much part of the Millennium Forest Project too. So during 1999, a year after, the idea sort of took seed, I suppose you'd say. The Millennium Forest Project, they raised 5.1 million. That was their funding. And they brought on the National Forestry Company, well-known Quilshire, and they were given the responsibility to actually manage the project. And they did that in partnership with the Woodlands of Ireland, which is in Drumshanbo. And I assume the Woodlands of Ireland, they really did the administrative stuff, the press releases and other media and information outlets, while the lads at Quilshire, maybe a few women too, they were the ones getting the spades into the ground and getting the trees planted. Now, another major objective of the Millennium Woodland was to create awareness among the public, the people of Ireland, even outside Ireland, about the importance of the heritage and maintaining the current stability of the too few native woodlands around Ireland. So the Millennium Forestry Project, if you remember it, as I say, really got going in the year 2000. There was quite a momentum while it created 16 native woodlands nationwide. 2 of them were in Northern Ireland, or are in Northern Ireland, still growing. And in addition, there was a lot of school and community education added in as well to help people be aware of what was going on and to encourage the connection to the native woodlands. And also, when the forests were planted, every household in the island of Ireland, every person that was listed as a citizen, they got a certificate. They had a tree that was planted for them. So the certificate told them what tree was planted for them and where it was if they wanted to ever visit it or find it. I think it had their name on it as well. A lot of people, excuse me, a lot of people tried that and they couldn't find their tree. And one of the things that's happened since, as the trees were so close together, there has been thinning. So some of those people, their trees are gone, they're being thinned. But a great project as it was happening, but unfortunately it was soon forgotten. Because Quilshire, the State Forestry Company, they seem to become even more obsessed with expanding tree plantations. This is like the tree farms just of Sitka spruce, just to get the crops, the woodland crops, fastish growing woodland crops. And farmers were told they could make good money with it. But through the Sitka spruce, if you grew as people in the Pacific Northwest of the USA, they're beautiful Sitka spruce trees there. They actually adore them there. And there's a few strays around Ireland, and they do absolutely look beautiful if they're a tree that's allowed to be a tree and allowed to spread out as they're supposed to. But in these plantations, they're like twigs and they're close together. And when they're planted in those close rows, it's actually a big biodiversity disaster. It's horrible. They take all the life and make all the life disappear from the area. And it kind of turns the place into a desert, really. And then on top of that, the Irish government, around 2012, they proposed to sell off all the public woodlands to private corporations. And that would have been an absolute disaster for the few native woodlands that were revered. Around 2000, the millennium, suddenly forgot about, okay, we're had enough of that, let's just sell them off. But fortunately, there was a sort of eruption of public protest to get that awful policy, the selling of the public woodlands, get it off the table. But much of it, sadly, just continued under the table. But the success of that 2000 Millennium Project, that's now 23 years away. The native trees that were planted, most of them are certainly healthy. As I said, some of them have been thinned to allow the stronger trees, I suppose you might say, to spread and really become encouraging of the biodiversity around them. And really, with native tree woodlands, it's not like the tree plantations with a Sitka spruce. Give it at least 50 years before you actually see the full benefits of the trees, the native trees that are planted. So for millennium trees that were planted in 2000, see what they're like after 2050, and you really see some wonderful things going on. Now, despite that awful lull in native woodland interest from about 2010 until about 2000 16, there's been suddenly over the last 8 years, I think, really, an accelerated interest in native trees and woodlands by very enthusiastic Irish people. And a lot of this has become motivated by nature folklore stories that involve native trees. There's been a lot of native trees that are the story's been spread in meetups. I was just looking at one of the features here. That's not actually about what I'm talking about, so I'm a little confused. I'll come back to it. Yeah, it was. What about the refugees in the EU? That would be another debate. It's not something I actually cover on the Nature Echoes, although I do cover some of the folklore that does come from the EU. But that's a political thing that would need another broadcast and another broadcaster. So it's not the sort of thing I would cover, and it doesn't really cover that here, except during that lull I was talking about during 2010 to 16, when I was doing the Bards in the Woods, which I'm actually going to talk a bit more about in a moment, thinking there was this enthusiasm after the Millennium Forest. And I thought, well, the one thing is, while they're selling the public woodlands, suddenly nobody in Ireland was actually taking a walk in the woods. I'd go in the woods, and not meet a soul. And so I put the Bards in the Woods on, and I'm actually going to explain that a lot more next Wednesday. But the people that were turning up in 2012 when we started this were all Eastern Europeans, the people certainly of Ukraine. There were Ukrainians, and there were other people from the area, because in those areas they have an incredible reference for the forestry. It's an important part, it always has been, of the culture that had been lost in Ireland. Now, the one thing with them taking an interest, the other thing they were having an interest in is how could they share their culture in helping out with the forestry here, and some of them did get involved with projects. So if that answers the question partially, I hope it does in some way. But that's the best I can answer on that one. Anyway, people now, one of the reasons they want to treasure the native woodlands is because with the folklore, they look at them now as treasured spaces where the fairies live, where the she roam, various things like that. So various native woodland projects. And there are some wonderful projects that have been started and motivated by Irish people over the last 8 years. The Native Woodland Trust, which has been around a long time, has suddenly greatly expanded. And the nice thing about the Native Woodland Trust is they have volunteer days. So it's not just an administrative organization. And then there's the Gaelic Woodland Project based in Meath, I think. And they've become very huge on woodland riparian buffer zones. Starting off beside the Boyne, they've been involved very much in the Boyne protests to stop the pollution that's starting to happen in the Boyne. But they like the riparian and buffers between farmland and river, between the water, so you actually have woodlands and the biodiversity, and that helps to keep the rivers in a very good order. Who else is there? Oh, Clare is really, it's funny, you go to the Burren, and that was actually full of pine trees in ancient times, but the pine trees were taken down by the people settling there, and when the pine trees were gone down, there was suddenly huge erosion and whatever, so the water just went into the sea, and that's why you got the Burren with a whole different fauna there now. But even now in the Burren, more Clare, more East Clare, there's Home Tree there, there's Wild Oaks. And those are two organizations very well focused on not only the tree planting, but they've got wonderful tree nurseries that they've established for expanding on native trees. And then there's a Woodland League, who have been fantastic at campaigning for native woodland rights and improved policy, especially during the time when the government were trying to sell the stuff off to corporations. And also in Clare, there's Celt. What does SCOUT stand for there? The Center of Education. Oh, I should know it. Anyway, it is an education center based around native woodland. It's on the management of native trees, propagating them, also crafts from the thinnings and from the trees. So it's all about woodland culture as much as anything else. So Wendy's here. She's got something. Good to see you, Wendy. Like your hat. Oh yeah, the hat. I've not got so many pictures, I'm afraid, Wendy. This was every week it's faster and faster putting together. And one of the reasons this was a fast put together is Claire and I. We haven't been doing many performances together for a long time, but we did a performance together at oh, I even forget the name of the place. Temple House. That kind of has a nice Templar history to it, and that's in County Sligo. Very good night of that that we had. So uh, recovering from that, I only had a few hours to put notes together for this. But this hat, I did mention that my son Holly, my daughter Ivy, they were here, and this was their present to me. It was they were here over my birthday last weekend, and fantastic time it was. And it's a very well-fitting hat. I've been out and we've had winds here the last few days. Not once has it blown off, so that's fantastic. Thank you. Yeah, lovely that you're here, Wendy. Thank you very much, and thanks for commenting. Now, anyone else? Right. I forgot to promote to the YouTube people, so we won't get any YouTube people here today. No, there we go. I'm trying to move on through the comments here. There isn't any at the moment, but I see there's been plenty of you watching, which is fantastic. Now, for talking about the Millennium, I've been stuck on the Millennium Forest Project. One of the things that's come out of it, and I talked about the importance of having tree nurseries to cater for the demand of expanding the native woodlands, because there isn't enough places to do it entirely naturally as we wish there was. There's a useful book anyway. I got a picture of it, I think. Let's see if I can get that up. Is that the picture? Yeah, that's the one I want. Called Our Trees, A Guide to Growing Islands, Trees and Shrubs. Now, that actually came out at the time of the Millennium Project. It came out in 2000, I think. Still around, still very current, still very, very important. You can get it from the Tree Council. It's very available, and it's fantastic help if you want to set up your own community or school tree nursery. If you just want a few trees for your garden, you can put a corner together of your own native tree garden. And the book's available. It's €20. It's well worth the €20. There's a lot of color in it. And it's from Tree Council. I'll probably put the link after the show, but if you can remember or think about it, treecouncil.ie. As simple as that. Tree Council, just as it says, TREECOUNCIL. treecouncil.ie. Go to their website, look at their books, look at the shops, and you will find amongst that, bring the picture up again, is that book of Our Trees. Well worth getting. Yeah, definitely. Right. Now we're not far from November. Hard thing to say. We're getting to the end of September now. And November starts the tree planting season. And but before then, well, November to March is the tree planting season with bare roots, that is, because the sap isn't running, and that's the time to do that. But right now, September, it's autumn, well into autumn, the fall. It's the time to collect the tree seeds because they're dropping. The acorns, the hazels, the birch seeds, beech seeds are all falling. And there is a process they call stratifying. And you stratify the seeds that you pick up to get your tree nursery expanded or going. So you stratify them through the winter so you can get plants sprouted and get going next spring, and you might have plants for the following winter to do some tree planting. So there's two methods of this thing called stratifying. You can either moisten, you've got your seeds, lay them out, soak them well, then wrap them in greaseproof paper and well wrapped, leave them in the fridge, leave them there in the fridge right through the winter. and then plant them in pots in spring, and make sure that your pots are very well drained as well. Or you can actually put them straight in the pots, make sure they're really well soaked, but also well drained. That your pots, for ensuring stratifying, make sure there's plenty of sand within them. You can, what's it, the stuff that's the pot? No, just leave it as sand. And good humus mixed in with it as well. And the reason for that, with the sand, that the winter frost will actually get the coldness down to the seeds, the appropriate amount of coldness, and the seeds will be able to do their thing as if they're out in the forest floor. So there's two ways of doing that. But if you get our trees, A Guide to Growing Island Trees and Shrubs, there's actually a stratifying instruction for each species of native tree. Now, one of the jobs of Woodland of Ireland at Drumshanbo also is to build a database of hedges. So they're not just stuck on the trees, they're very concerned about the hedges. This is a fairly recent project. I think they really got going with this about 2015. But as you notice going around Ireland, there's a lot of hedge destruction. It's sad to see it going on. The hedges have ripped out and just a metal fence that's absolutely useless. It's not going to help the land whatsoever. It's actually going to cause erosion and certainly less home for the biodiversity, which helps the fields as well. And there's actually an Irish state interest in getting data on the hedges because they're now aware of the carbon store potential of the hedge, the habitat hedge. You know, there's a lot of habitat in the hedges, so they're very aware of the potential and the biodiversity of that habitat. And like all governments, they want to see what they can do about dealing with the climate change crisis. I know this is sort of sponging over, but if they can get the data about hedges, then they can go to other countries and say, hey, guys, we're doing something. So there's a bit of that, unfortunately. But through hedges, this is a bit of a new hedge here, I think. There we go, newly hedge laying that is sprouting up from the logs. That's one way of doing hedge laying anyway. There's some recognition now, more recognition amongst the public about the sustainability of our land through the good management of hedges. And if that study expands through into biological diversity that happens due to the presence of hedges, there's all sorts of life within those hedges. There's the birds, there's the little mammals like hedgehogs, insects, and there's even bacteria as well that's important, and lichen as well, lichen as well. Now, it is connected with this because I mentioned earlier, Claire Roach and I, we performed a very lovely gig at Temple House in County Sligo last night. And this kicked off with me actually talking about some folklore stories of the Sidhe and how this flowed into the wisdom of the Cauldrons of Posey. And that subject I talked to you about on Nature Echoes, I think it was a couple of weeks ago. And between those themes of the Sidhe and the Cauldrons of Posey, I talked about how religion and colonialism, how it wiped out an incredible amount of folklore due to the doctrines that are enforced and also the cloning processes of what you are supposed to believe in. I actually had a bit of an experience of that myself a couple of days ago. No, it was a few days ago now. There were some people that wanted to talk to me and to go around locally, and they wanted me to show them the Sidhe and the fairies. They were locally, and of course I do have my own interpretation of that. And when they found out what my interpretation of the flow of the Sidhe was, they wanted someone that was actually going to show them tiny fairies with wings on. And because that's what a lot of people have been indoctrinated into. It's not their own vision of what the Sidhe and the fairies are. It's what they've been doctrinated into, that fairies are small creatures with wings. And that's, that's what they're looking for, because that is the firm imagery they got. It's not their own imagery. It's one that was put on them. And that's what I feel happens with religion. And it happens with marketing too. It's all part of cloning. So I did get controversial in between those subjects. And Ireland's been through this. It was a very severe because there was the English motivation for a few hundred years to wipe out the Gaelic culture, the Gaelic culture. And this included wiping out the language, wiping out the stories, and even wiping out the harpers that were spreading the stories and the language. But there were some brave elders that were still able to sustain small schools, that they would hide and pass on this culture, this past culture, even though they might only hold fragments still, but they would teach people, young people, how to keep the fragments of culture alive. And what they did this, they hid amongst the hedges. And we now historically call those, not hysterically, historically call these hedge schools. And there's a lovely revival of hedge schools that's happening now. And I talked about the Bards in the Woods. It wasn't my intention. My intention was to encourage more people into the woods from 2012. But what we ended up doing was quite the equivalent as what I imagine these hedge schools would have been doing. We certainly had a nature walk. We had a picnic, shared picnic, where people would share their feelings. And through that, it was amazing how much of old stories and culture was exchanged. And then we had a poetry and story session. So though I wasn't intending that and wasn't realizing, what we realized when we were going home is it was so different to the stuff we've been doctrined to, and people were looking forward to our Sunday meetups because it was very much, though it was amongst trees, it was very much, I think, in the spirit of those hedge schools. And so I'd love to have a go at this again somehow from spring next year. Maybe it'll be amongst hedges this time. But storytelling and sharing gatherings outside amongst trees and hedges. We were inside Temple House, beautifully done. It was the evening. It was appropriate because it was a stinker of a wet day anyway. But I think this sort of stuff is far better, and there's much more wisdom shared outside amongst the trees, amongst the hedges, than actually trying to do this in rooms. And I was saying, my son Holly, he was visiting here with my daughter Ivy in South Leitrim, and it was fascinating to hear the work he does. And he was sharing the latest of his hedge school activities around the UK schools. So he's very much keeping that alive. And he's done this in various forms for many years. It must be for at least 25 years now, even more, I would say. And much of this time now is actually teaching teachers to be more hedge-like in their education. And the children, all ages, small kids, right up through teens, they work with school community gardens, and they work with hedges to understand biodiversity. Pollination as well is a big thing. And so my son's really teaching teachers more of the time to bring the hedge school type things into the curriculum to be as important as learning the maths and English and the other stuff. And the big thing amongst the schools that he's been encouraging is them to grow little tree nurseries. And really with this education is a focus on pollination. I tried to get an interview with my son whilst he was here for this show, but there was a lot going on, places we were going, people were meeting. It didn't happen. But I hope I've been trying for ages, but I hope we do get him to chat with us. But to give you a preview, I love his simple approach. What he tells his students, one thing, because people say, oh, I can't do that. I don't know how to garden. I don't know how to forestry manage. And he always says, we don't have to be a gardener. You don't have to be a forestry manager. To be a gardener, no gardeners start off as gardeners. First thing, keep it simple. Go to the garden centre, buy a few plants that you like in pots, bring them home, stick them in the ground. Just water them and naturally feed them when you think it needs it. You'll probably get some instructions from the centre anyway, the garden centre. You don't have to go running for books or watch YouTubes. Leave it to your senses. Most important thing is to watch those plants that you planted and sense what's going on. If they die on you, don't worry about it. That's what he teaches, because it's all essential learning. It may be simply bad luck with the plants that you brought home and planted died off. It can be bad luck. But you learn a little more about what was going on with that bad luck. Or you might find out how to be better at watering them and feeding them, and about their soil conditions, because this is what has made gardeners from the ancient past. So you're going through that sensual kind of clairvoyant process, and this is what encourages: keep it simple, don't get upset. This is a wonderful learning process. Sometimes plants die because of weather matter, maybe too much wind, too early frost, too much heat. These are things beyond your control. So accept that. It's all learning, and just keep trying again and learn more. That's what he encourages anyway. So it's a lovely project. The ones that my son are doing, also the Woodlands of Ireland. Because one of the things that they're doing, they're relating relating trees and woodlands. And this is part of the hedge school thing. How do these woodlands relate to the old Gaelic, the old Gaelic language, the old Gaels, the Changana Gaels, the place names, and the stories behind the place names? Let's have a sort of place for it. I don't know what the name of this place is, but this is a sort of thing. It's bound to have an incredible woodland related story, but even though there's no trees or hardly any trees there might even be some micro yew trees. I don't know, but I just thought it was a nice picture to kind of bring that forward. There's one that, when we lived in County Sligo, Carracrory, the village nearby, Cofada. Use that as an example. That's really an Anglican name because his Cuila father was his old name. And what that does, Cuila father, is describing a long forest, a woodland, because the father is long. And actually, that forest there called Father, there's a village there now, but that long forest, it actually follows the banks of the river, both sides. And very much like the riparian buffer projects that people are actually planting trees and creating that protects the water. So that, there's quite a story behind that, behind just the simple name of Cofada. So fascinating study. How do trees and woodlands relate to the Shanga or Changa Nagaoj? Very much part of the hedge school essentials. And I'm actually going to talk a lot more about that probably in the next Nature Echoes. So I hope you'll come back for that as well. So if you've got any comments or any questions about that, say I can't help you on the refugees on that one, but everything to do with the woods, the trees, and the place names maybe, and the effects of the sea and the water with that sort of things. I think that's as much as I'll talk on. I'm going to go on to the next echo now. So if you've got anything to say about that, please let me know. I'm going to something that was fascinating that I picked up on the Facebook a few days ago. It's a short poem that was posted on Facebook by a morologue. I assume she must be a poet of some form. And it was called The Old Irish Healer to the Soul. And I'm going to bring up a picture that she put with the poem. That one's there, The Laying of Hands Healing. And I actually relate to this, as my father's family, they hosted healing circles all over the UK with this similar practice. And the practice was very much sort of under the code of, I can't remember who Big Cheese was. My father was sort of a semi-Big Cheese for a while. Harry Edwards, that's right, the National something of Spiritual Healers, the National Federation of Spiritual Healers, which is not called that anymore. It's called the Healing Trust, is the current name of that. Anyway, and I've got some amazing personal memories of those healing circles from when I was a child. But why I've not carried on doing those healing circles as a family tradition, I can't explain. And I would say it's very much part of the hedge school stuff if we push it. Anyway, I'll give you the poem on that that Moore League shared with us. Now, it's not your back that hurts, but your burden. It's not your eyes that hurt, but injustice. It's not your head that hurts, it's your thoughts. It's not the throat, but what you don't express or say. with anger. It's not the stomach that hurts, but what the soul does not digest. It's not the liver that hurts, it's the anger. It's not your heart that hurts, but love. And it's love itself that contains the most powerful medicine. So, in a way, that's sort of laying of hands. And that poem, that's going back to the three cauldrons again, isn't it? How you help bring all those three cauldrons, the nourishment at the bottom, and that swaggering one in the middle, which is to deal with our emotions, and then the one at the top in our head, getting that upright with your wisdom. Anyway, I also saw this meme, thinking that I only saw this a couple of hours ago, actually, on Facebook, if I can wheel this up as well. There we go. Supposedly something said by Liam Neeson there, very related, but I suppose you know about the accuracy of meme quotes on social media. Whether Liam actually said this or not, I don't think it's very important, but that's what it says on the meme. Anyway, let's, again, to me, very related to the cauldron of Posey and how to get them, all three of them, upright. And what he says here, I think, actually explains the cauldrons of Posey much better than the waffle I've shared with you so far. So there he goes. Everyone says love hurts, even that last poem, but that's not true. Loneliness hurts, rejection hurts, envy hurts, and everybody gets these things confused with love. But in reality, love is the only thing in this world that covers up all pain and makes someone feel wonderful again. Love is the only thing in this world that does not hurt. I think that's beautifully put, even if it was Liam. And that's so. Now there was one more echo. I know I've been on 40 minutes, but I think this is quite important. It's not actually a nature one. I haven't got time to put notes up. I was going to see if I can recall this, but it was a lovely thing I thought came in from Substack, because as you know, I really enjoy putting my writing content and other content, verbal and video sometimes, up on Substack. It's a network I really enjoy. It's a nice refreshment from the Facebook, that weirdo X that was Twitter, and all that anger and so forth. Now Substack came, they get a little bit competitive, as you know. One of the main things about Substack, so far, there's no algorithms to follow. Nothing follows around. But Substack's made an announcement, because I think they're about to use algorithms. But I love the way they present how they're going to do algorithms. I love their wisdom with this and their intended approach. Because recently, the Substack is not only going through publishing writers' work, content, they've brought in notes. And that really got Elon Musk a little nervous, because he thought, Substack's going to compete with Twitter. And I believe he stopped allowing Substack content on Twitter, now X, because he was really worried about the competition. And now we have Twitter thinking of going on to paid subscription, because, of course, that's how Substack survive. They don't survive from advertising. They survive from people who actually pay subscriptions to get to the writing. Anyway, here's what, when it comes to algorithms, I'd like to read to you what Substack just announced. This is not all of it, but I think this is the best bit. Sometimes it can feel like online spaces you spend time in are now working against you. They are pushing you towards things that their social media owners value, but not what you value. They're harnessing your energy to fuel the very things that you hate. Now, like me, you probably know the feeling of spending too much time gorging on digital junk food on the social media, wasting your precious moments of your life, and you can't get them back again. Now, maybe you've even felt yourself becoming someone that's different to the person that you want to be, because through social media engagement, you may find that you become angrier, more distracted, and at worst, more distant from human connection, even though it's called social media. So, what is social about that? Now, it's tempting to blame the social media algorithms, which a lot of people do, and plenty of people do. I think blaming social algorithms has become equal to blaming Mercury retrograde. But algorithms in themselves, they're neither good, they're neither bad because they're neutral. They're just technology. Now, the root problem lies in the master. Who is the master of the algorithms that we end up serving? Who are those masters? And now we may regard the masters that we are serving are the advertisers, and that comes up on post, doesn't it? Now, while it's true the legacy of social platforms are funded from adverts, and they've built large businesses, the foundation social media companies anyway, they've built huge businesses by harvesting our attention and selling slices as a commodity. But that's not the whole story. These platforms, they also have to serve their users, us. We may not realize it, but they need us. They need our attention. They must win an incredibly competitive game by serving us the content that gets us to click, watch, keep scrolling minute by minute, which is what we do on the social media if we get carried away. So ultimately, the big bad enemy that the legacy platform algorithms are serving is not adverts, it's not the algorithms itself, but it's us. The algorithms have been studying us. They know what they think we want. They serve our desires and they do it with ruthless intent. Now, the problem is the version of us that these algorithms serve. All they know, it's a bit like the A1, all they know is the base version of ourselves. What they do is they skip past our values, they don't know our aspirations, and they certainly don't know our conscious thought. So they go straight to pressing these algorithms, they go straight to pressing the buttons that are in our lizard brains, just as fast food may do to us, or going to a casino, or with smokers taking a drag of a cigarette. But of course, this is still about making choices, even with anything there. But if we have our aspirations for ourselves, we want to feed our minds with something much better than that. We want algorithms playing different rules. Now, can you imagine how your view of the world might change if you spent your time online in a place that was optimized for reading what you care about most, rather than just go through the endless scrolling? Now, what would it feel like to check a feed that's just trying to catch you up on what you deeply value, rather than keeping you feeling anxious, angry, and alone? Now, on Substack, tens of millions of people are already connected directly with writers and creators in an online universe of amazing stories and ideas that's all based on different sets of rules that are used by the legacy social media. Now, increasingly, people are finding new writers and creators on Substack and they're falling in love with them. Now, some of the brightest lights in our culture, established writers and new writers, they find the freedom to do the work that they believe in and they post it here on Substack. And they're starting to find each other too. So on Substack, we feel an intense responsibility to help people, help writers and the readers reach their potential. You see a manifestation of these efforts very soon. That's coming up in a new version of our Substack app. It's going to grow into being a personal portal into our Substack universe. What you can expect from these improvements is to support discovery across the Substack network and maintaining the direct relationship between the readers and writers. But we cannot survive if we cannot serve the best versions of you. So we're committed to building technologies that cater to the version of you that sits at the breakfast table on a Sunday morning and thinks very carefully about how you'll spend the next 30 minutes. We'll be serving the version of you that is excited to financially support the writers you trust, And when we win as subscribers, of course, we're very happy. Substack succeeds when you spend time with the work that you value the most, the work that helps you grow and progress, and the work that helps you fall deeper in love. And we're trying to build a new economic viable platform for culture. We are far from perfect yet, we're still new, but we still want to thrive from what is different and is far better than what wins people over on other social platforms. We're not against algorithms, and we'll now enthusiastically use algorithms as long as we can use them to serve human ends that we care about. Now, for readers, that means letting you decide what you read as the best version of yourself and helping you to take back your own mind. Now, the real trick is that culture is not about getting what you want. Culture is about learning why you want what you want. It's learning about refining your tastes, challenging your convictions, and promoting humanity through all of this process. Algorithms, systems that work against you, they can erode your will, erode your life over time, and cause you to seriously drop the standards, your own standards, even lower. But there can be an algorithm system that serves your aspirational self, and it can kickstart you back into a positive loop. Now, the more you read and curate your attention, the greater return your mind will get from the time that you invest in the reading each day. So one morning, you may even wake up to find you're no longer feeling angry or distracted, instead being very confident when, at least when it comes to reading. And this is ending up starting a day that's going to be very well spent. And indeed, I've never felt so good about sharing my content and entering into discussions. I'm talking about myself now because I really enjoy the discussions I have on the Substack. I really feel good when I put content up there, as I've done. And I sincerely, as I say, that was their mission statement for the moment. I hope their mission keeps fulfilling. And to me, it really links up well with the headstool stuff I've been talking about. And yeah, thank you, John and Brian. I love the hat, as I was mentioning earlier in the program. A present from my son Holly, 90 birthday present from last week when I'm visiting, and it fits perfectly. And it fits so perfectly, I can barely get it off. So I have to put up with it on. Thank you very much. And there's another one. I think I should have just sat here for half an hour, said nothing, and just prated with my hat. That's definitely got plenty of attention. No problem with that at all. Thank you for your comments on the hat. So anyway, what are we rattling on about now? All right. Well, thank you for watching this Nature Echoes. It's different again, and I got a bit more to share. Consider subscribing. See, I've been talking about. I've been selling Substack, but there you go. I got at least 40 free articles a year on that if you go for the free subscription. But to help keep the show on the road, I do have the course, which is now the Owen Prompt course, and it was the Journal in Nature Folklore. That's 20 modules a year. You can join in any time. It's a revolving course, not a linear one. You get the latest updates on the modules from the year before, and also one going to be throwing into the paid subscriptions. I've been thinking about that for the last week. There's a lot of the stuff I've been sharing with you through the free articles. I'm really going to develop those next year, so you'll get extra content that'll be very much videos, audios, interviews, very much exclusive stuff on the same themes, but they're going to be exclusive to the subscribers. So I've got some plans on that for next year, but there'll still be the 40 free articles anyway, and we'll get the online workshops going as well. So if you go onto the subscription, €5 a month, or go for the year, €30, that gives you 50% discount, and that's charged in your own currency. So thank you for your support. As I say, it keeps me broadcasting, helps me out with my annual and monthly charges. subscription charges. So thank you very much for that. As I say, coming up on the next Nature Echoes, are going to be returning to actually repeating. I don't know if you can see that spider coming down there. Anyway, I'm going to really share what I share with the people when we opened up, Claire and I, yesterday at Temple House. I'm going to put that into a Nature Echoes next week. I think you'll enjoy that. So that's what I'm going to try and do next week. Anybody else complimenting my hat or any other comments? No, not at the moment. So thank you. I've enjoyed sharing this with you. I've gone because I talked, because I actually recited that lovely update newsletter from Substack about their intent and their mission. I think it's great stuff, and I love working with them. So if you're watching this as a replay or you came in late and you'll be watching a replay, keep posting your comments, the questions, and I'll keep answering as best I can. Nobody came through YouTube this time because I didn't promote myself through the channels that go through YouTube, places like Meetup. It's been such a busy few days, I didn't do the extra promotion that I should have done. But if you come through YouTube, the bell icon, click that, and you get reminded of each Nature Echo. So enjoy a wonderful, another wonderful week. I think the winds are going to die down here. There's certainly going to be more sun. So whatever you're doing, enjoy the wonder, inspirations, and enchantments that will come to you from the presence of the water woods and the mysteries of nature. The head school stuff, as I'm talking about, will be next week as well. So until next Sunday, play well, and that's all I got. Thank you very much. Bye. I'll see you next Sunday. Great.